with the kickoff of the NFL divisional round. It will see several familiar faces in its Elite Eight. Meanwhile, there will be a rookie and a sophomore quarterback making his debut into this part of the NFL playoff, including the sophomore quarterback that will be attempting to do what other teams have not been able to do the past 2 seasons: unseat a back-to-back champ and possibly stopping the three-peat. Want to find out who this team is and how they can stop the three-peat? Stay tuned to find out on Gridiron Gab Pro Style.
The autumn winds move like the thunderous waves of Neptune's sacred palace. And here, amongst the blackened soil, lies the ragged hands, worn, torn, and callous. They await with cunning and vicious prowess, for the warriors have returned.
Come on, Dirt! Don't do it! Woo! No way! Woo! 85! Crying out loud! You're making me, you're driving me nuts!
But behold.
Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you all so much for joining us on this edition of Gridiron Gab Pro Style. Of course, you're gabbing with the one and only Mr. CeeLo here, and hope you guys are doing great out there. Thank you all so much for being with us. Just want to give my heartfelt prayers and concerns to those out there in Los Angeles that are dealing with the devastation of these wildfires. Hope you guys are safe, and we will continuously be praying for you, and want to give thanks to the firefighters that are risking their lives and taking time away from their families to go up against this horrible situation. We respect you and honor you. Now, we will be taking a look at the 4:30 matchup on Saturday, which could probably pale in comparison to the game that it is going to follow. But it's a good appetizer for the start of the divisional. That would be the Houston Texans facing off against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, unless you've been sleeping under a rock for the last 2 years or the last 6 months or even the last year, all the talk has been since the Kansas City Chiefs won their last championship, can they go for 3? Is there anybody that can stop this team? Well, if any of you watched my shows, you guys can rewind about 5-6 months. I made a show where how the Texans can actually pull out this victory. Well, here we are. And my stance on this has not changed. The only difference now is we look at a different aspect of it. And that is the Houston Texans defense. Now, while so many people say that the Houston Texans lost some firepower, in which they did when they lost Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, C.J. Stroud last week seemed like he came out of his slump after that wonderful scramble that he had. It seemed like that there was a light that went on. And all of a sudden, he remembered how to, and that's no shot at him. It just seemed like that light went on. And you can't take anything away from the defense. I'll get to those guys in a minute. But it seemed like C.J. Stroud had got back some of his swagger. It was along the lines of internal benching, so to speak. And then as soon as he was able to make that scramble, it was like every problem that he was dealing with or whatever it may have been just disappeared. And he played a beautiful, marvelous game against the Chargers. And it looked as though the Chargers were going to win that game. But as you know, you watched the show beforehand, and I explained basically what had happened in that show. But the reason why I bring that up is this could possibly be the reawakening of this Houston Texans offense. I mean, Stroud was hitting so many different guys out there on Saturday. It was just amazing. It looked like the old C.J. Stroud again. He looked confident. The running game started to get on track yet again. And when you see an offense that can be this dynamic with Stroud using his legs, it seemed as though someone got in his ear and said, use your legs. And the Chargers had no answer for it. And it just opened up a variety of different things for Bobby Slowick and his offense. And ultimately, this is why the NFL is really going towards more mobile quarterbacks. It's the days, I'm not saying they're gone, but I think the days of the stationary quarterback are going to be done unless you have a quarterback that can just absolutely manipulate the pocket. Jared Goff is very good at that, but we'll get to him later on. But I'm just pointing out that C.J. Stroud may have awakened. And this is horrible news for that Kansas City defense. And I'm not basing this, any Chiefs fan out there, I'm not basing this on how you looked against Denver. Okay? I said that going in. That was a horrible litmus test for the Denver Broncos, and it showed when they went up against the Buffalo Bills last week. With that being said, the Kansas City Chiefs have been extraordinarily fortunate when they've played teams. They've had a lot of breaks go their way, and we all know that it's a matter of time before those breaks stop falling your way. Now, granted, this game's going to be at Arrowhead where the temperature and the conditions are going to be totally different than they are inside of a dome in Houston. We saw what it did to Miami last year when they went to Arrowhead. This is the biggest nightmare that any team in the AFC did not want to deal with in the playoffs is going to Arrowhead. Now, the conditions are going to be very cold. Do I think Houston has what it takes to go in there and win this game? Let's break it down. C.J. Stroud's going to have to run the ball more than he's comfortable with doing. In order to get Joe Mixon going, that's the catalyst right there, people. Joe Mixon is going to have to be huge for this team. If he's not putting it down, there's no way Houston can win this game. Now, the reason why I say Joe Mixon has to be able to throw it down is because you have to be able to slow the pace of the game. You have to be able to give Patrick Mahomes as few opportunities as you possibly can. Now, the matchups are as such. The defensive line led by Chris Jones and Karlaftis, those guys have gotten, Karlaftis has definitely come on. These are guys that if you look at, you have to be able to contain, and probably the biggest weakness that the Houston Texans have is their offensive line, especially around that guard position. There's been questions at that left tackle position as well. That right tackle position as well. Laramie Tunsil's had some up and downs this season. So Bobby Slow is going to have to be very creative in what he decides to throw at this Kansas City. He's going to throw very different looks. You saw they made a very concerted effort to get Mechie the football last week. And, of course, you have Nico Collins, but you really have to spread the football around. And I thought they did a phenomenal job of doing that against the Chargers. They're going to have to throw the ball to Mixon out of the backfield, I think, because Kansas City is a very reactionary defense. They're very tough on the back end, but I think with Slowick being able to mix some different types of routes in there, I think they'll be fine. The question is, can they keep the ball away from Mahomes? Which flips me over to that Houston defense versus Patrick Mahomes and that offense. From Derek Stingley to Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Now, the Chargers showed they had an absolute nightmare fest trying to keep Will Anderson out of the backfield. Danielle Hunter, they did a pretty good job with chips and offering help. You can't forget about Will Anderson. The reason they went out and they got Danielle Hunter was so that they could have that true blue nightmare 1-2 punch on the outside. And you have to pick your poison with this team. And ultimately, the Chiefs have struggled up front. Now, I'm not going to sit here and be a whine fest, but I will say this. The officiating is going to be under they're going to be under the microscope, watching for holds, because that line is one of the top lines when it comes to holding penalties, and there should be plenty more. And the truth of the matter is, if Houston can get pressure with 4 without blitzing, this could be a long day for Mahomes and the Chiefs. And it goes back to when we watched Herbert throw those interceptions last week. Maybe 1 or 2 were just ill-advised throws, but then there were a couple of really good plays on the football. This Houston secondary, led by Stingley, is nothing to play with. This defense is a ball-hawking type defense, and they even took one back for 6. You can't play around with this defense if you're Mahomes, and Mahomes has not been himself this year. I get it. You got Hopkins, you got Hollywood Brown, you've got Xavier Worthy, and of course you got Travis Kelce. I think ultimately, in order for Kansas City to win this game, Pacheco, they're going to have to give a lot of handoffs to Pacheco. This is going to have to be a game that they slob at this defensive line of Houston because they're not anything to play with. This team gets to a point, and all it takes is one tweak of Mahomes' ankle. And I'm not trying to put that out there, Kansas City fans. I'm just saying, when you got guys like Danielle Hunter and you got Will Anderson, who will pop you, and the 15-yard personal fouls do not scare him. He will lay Mahomes out. This guy, when he brings it, Kansas City fans. So you don't need to be complaining. If Mahomes gets in there and he gets walloped by one Will Anderson, can't do it. And the other thing is that rust factor. The Chiefs have been off for 2 weeks. It will have been 3 weeks since Mahomes touched the football. It will have been 3 weeks for Nuke Hopkins, Hollywood Brown. Now, they've had a chance to get healthy. Very true. But now you got to go back out there. Not saying you can't handle the conditions because you played there. But you've got to face off against a football team that is very fast on the defensive end. They're very quick. And I know Andy Reid's good. He's probably going to try to do a lot of screening, which is very much in their play. That's where I see Kansas City going with this game. They're going to try to get guys on the edge. They're not going to want to run in that box with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson and company. They're not going to try to do that. This is a team that's got a ton of speed. You've got Hollywood Brown. You've got Xavier Worthy. And that could be an issue of keeping guys out of the box for the Texans. Ultimately, they're gonna try to play some man, but I think they're gonna mix it up and play. You know how it is. You know how Houston does things. They're going to want to mix things up. At the end, Mahomes has got to take care of the football. One thing Houston's very good, and you saw it last week, is taking the football away. When Mahomes goes down, he better make sure he hangs on to that football. These guys are good at trying to punch the ball out. With that being said, ultimately, this game is going to ride in the hands of Patrick Mahomes' decision-making. Taking care of the football. Ultimately, you don't want to give Houston points on the defensive side. Because ultimately, it's your offense against their defense. You do not want to get in a matchup with that. Even the great Patrick Mahomes does not want to get in a matchup with that. Because even still, as the Chiefs, you want to control the clock as well. Because right now, the way C.J. Stroud and their offense got it back together against the Kansas City Chiefs, you don't want them on the field. So it's going to be a question of which team, and I know this is so cliche, which team can control the line of scrimmage and run the football. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, this is Patrick Mahomes. Well, this is not a game you want to go out there and lasso it all over the field. It's not going to be one of those games for either team. You make plays where you can at the quarterback position and hopefully rely on your offensive line to slow the pace of the game down, stay on the field so that you can keep the opposing offense on the sideline cold. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, the defense is getting cold too. It's better for your defense to be out there sitting on the bench with those big hefty coats on staying warm as opposed to being out there on that field trying to run on that hard behind ground and getting hit and this, that, and the other in that cold weather. So it's going to be a question of who can stay out on the field the longest. I'm predicting whoever takes the time of possession is going to win this game. It's not. It could be. We saw the Chargers have a bunch of yards in that game, but when you have turnovers like they did, you're going to get blown out. It's just not going to happen. Ultimately, I am siding with the Texans slightly. The only reason I'm siding with them is because I saw the awakening of CJ Stroud coupled with the fact that they just manhandled the Chargers. Now, I get it. People are going to say, well, they're playing in Arrowhead and it's cold. The problem is the Chiefs have had, it'll be officially 3 weeks since they last played the last game. Wild card, week 18. And then this week. You've been off the field for 3 weeks. This will be your first snap in over 3 weeks. So needless to say, if they come out, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the Texans are going to come out. They're going to see what the Chiefs are about the first play. And it's possible that defense gets gashed because this will be their first contact, real live contact in 3 weeks. There's a big difference when you're out there practicing as opposed to going game speed. Just think about that. I'm taking the Texans on a slight edge. Now, please leave your comments down there if you don't like it. But we've seen many years where the team that got the bye got bounced. We saw it in the college football playoff. Sometimes it is better to rest. Sometimes it is better to get out there and play. It all depends on the team. But I am taking the Texans, but I will say this. If the Chiefs come out like they're supposed to, I don't see Houston being able to sustain what they were able to do against the Chargers. But I'll also say this. It's largely possible that the Texans could get in a hole and make this a game. But I'm largely going with the Houston Texans, you guys. I know Chiefs fans are going to be upset. But the reality of it is you got to be real with yourselves. That rust is real. Game rust is real. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think I'm being delusional or am I being a hater? And do you think that the Chiefs are going to be fine? Please let me know in the comments. I always welcome your comments, and I appreciate all of you guys that are actually watching. Also, make sure you go to the Facebook page and the Facebook group of the same name, Gridiron Gab Pro Style, as well as going to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo to check in and out of all the shenanigans that I am involved in. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.
But behold, there is a warm breeze that comes from the west. The blazing sounds of victory fuel their everlasting quest. It is a call to arms, for they are here. An army that has the will to challenge and the will to dare.
Wait